War. War never changes.
So, let's distract ourselves by playing a cute puzzle game and then going bowling. My name is Graeldon, and I'm reviewing Steam games in alphabetical order to find the hidden gems among the piles of garbage, and today's games are 10-Minute Tower and 10-Pin Bowling. Let's begin! Do you remember what it was like being a child, playing with toys in the living room? Back when you didn't have to worry about your job or your education, bills or taxes. Back when you were carefree and innocent. You could play with the same toys time and time again, inventing new characters, new stories, new adventures for them to go on. Well, today's game, 10-Minute Tower, leans heavily into this nostalgic feeling, with everything taking place as part of a child's imagination, which may leave you wondering, how the heck did a child get so good at creating puzzles? Before we get into the game itself though, we need to go over a bit of extra context. 10-Minute Tower was released in 2016 and developed by Team 17, the studio behind games such as Overcooked, Blasphemous, Dredge, and the Worms franchise. 10-Minute Tower is a significantly less ambitious title, but interestingly, it's not possible to buy this game as a standalone title on Steam. Instead, it's only available as part of a bundle with 12 other games called Help! The Game, which is a compilation of games published by Warchild Gaming, who you may be familiar with as they were the publisher behind This War of Mine, a game that crafted a somber, realistic and thought-provoking portrayal of the horrors of war. They are also affiliated with a charity group by the same name, Warchild, and the proceeds from each game bundle purchase go directly to the charity, helping to support families and children affected by war and conflict. All in all, I think it's pretty neat. To my knowledge, there aren't many opportunities like this outside of special charity events, so I appreciate that I'm able to contribute to a good cause while also getting my hands on some pretty niche games. Which brings us neatly back to 10-Minute Tower, a game about playing as characters from a child's imagination as they solve puzzles while climbing a tower. With a top-down perspective that's reminiscent of the classic Legend of Zelda games or even the more recent Binding of Isaac, 10-Minute Tower does away with the enemies and instead focuses on the puzzle-solving elements, incorporating a number of different individual elements into the grid-based levels. Upon launching the game, there's the basic Unity options menu where you can select the resolution and graphics setting, and you'd better be thankful to have at least that because there aren't any options available inside of the game itself. In terms of controls, you can play using either a keyboard and mouse or a gamepad depending on your preference, both work fine for the gameplay. After the initial welcome screen, we're straight into the action. There's a series of charming chalk pictures on the floor of the first room that serve as a tutorial, teaching you how to move, run, and interact with objects, and I love this for 3 reasons. Firstly, it's whimsical and childish, fitting with the theme of the game. Secondly, you need to put this information into action to press the 2 switches in the room, and thirdly, it also acts as a mini tutorial to teach you how the 2 different types of blocks will behave when you interact with them. Ice will slide until it hits an object, and stone can be pushed or pulled tile by tile. Sadly, the part that is disappointing, although also incredibly minor, is the fact that the different UI elements aren't consistent with each other. In the top left and top right, you have post-it notes that look like they've been drawn on in crayon. One serves as a reminder for how to reset the room if you get stuck, and the other displays the name of the room you're in. In the bottom left, in a somewhat similar style, there are scraps of paper that are used to show how many coins you've collected and how much time is remaining. Time that, by the way, starts ticking down as soon as you start the tutorial level. And then lastly, in the bottom right is the character select, which does away with the arts and crafts aesthetic and instead uses 3D models. And this makes me sad, because we could have had incredibly cute crayon drawings of each of the characters, but we got this instead. At least the first character, the robot, appears to be made by using a cardboard box and crayons for the body, so that's a lovely touch. The rooms in the tower are completely randomized, which means that each run will be different, but there are a fairly small pool of puzzle rooms that the game has to pull from, meaning that in a single run, you may end up encountering the same puzzle a handful of times. After completing a room, any closed doors around the edge will open, and you can freely choose which direction you want to explore in. The majority of rooms can be solved using only the robot, but eventually you'll find rooms that require the abilities of the other characters. After exploring enough and by getting a little bit lucky, you'll stumble upon a room with either the astronaut or the knight. Once found, you can cycle between active characters with a button press, but you can only cycle in one direction. I'm not sure why they didn't map these to the left and right bumper buttons on a controller, as it means that going from the knight to the astronaut and then to the robot requires 4 button presses instead of 2. But again, that's minor in the big picture. I'm just lazy and want to do 50% less work, okay? With the power of the astronaut, you can jump over a single tile, allowing you to jump over blocks to be able to push them from the other side, or even jump over bottomless pits. As the knight, you're able to destroy certain blocks with a swing of your mighty sword, and, well, actually that's about it. All in all, they add to your repertoire of abilities, but you'll still be using the robot the majority of the time, as the only way to solve puzzles is to, well, move things, and that's something only the robot can do. Once you've found all the characters, you can theoretically solve any puzzle that you encounter, so let's talk about the puzzles for a moment. The rock and ice blocks we found at the start will constitute the core elements of most puzzles, along with the ghost and skeleton blocks. Add in the buttons that are triggers for the doors, and you've seen every puzzle element in the game. The puzzles themselves range in difficulty from a walk in the park to a walk into Mordor. Maybe it was the time pressure getting to me, but there were some puzzles I simply failed to solve. Thankfully, if that happens, you can simply leave and go to a different room. On the downside, because the puzzles themselves aren't randomized, only the order in which you encounter them, once you've solved a room, you'll be quickly and easily able to resolve it the next time you encounter it, which, instead of being satisfying, it leads to a feeling of frustration and boredom. Now, you might be wondering 2 things. 1, is there an exit that you're meant to find? And 2, what are the gold coins for? Well, the answers are related. This is a score attack game, not an adventure game. The goal isn't to leave the tower, but instead to solve as many puzzles as possible and to collect as much gold as you can. There is no escape. And there also is no tower, because if you had been paying attention, you would have noticed a distinct lack of stairs. This is a game that sounds great on paper, but unfortunately the end product doesn't quite live up to the blueprint that they had laid out in the design phase. The controls are simple, but simultaneously clunky. Sometimes the grid-based movement simply fails to respond, as does the character switching, leading to a sense of frustration. The repetition of the puzzles kills off any sense of exploration and discovery fairly quickly, as there simply isn't enough variety to entertain the average player for more than a few rounds. There are a series of 10 informational panels to be found throughout the game, but rather than providing hints for the puzzles or clues for an overarching story or challenge, instead provide information about the War Child charity. And maybe this is a bad take from me, but if you're going to put something like this into a game, fine, not a problem. But don't make it so that after interacting with the sign, it auto-selects an option that opens your Twitter page in a browser, because years upon years of gaming have taught me to mash the interact button to make the text go faster, and nothing makes me dislike a game more than being kicked out of it to read what is essentially advertising. Don't get me wrong, I think this is a great charity for a great cause, but if you want to raise awareness about the charity, this is not the way to do it. I did ponder for a moment if I was approaching this the wrong way, and that perhaps this was intended as a children's game, and maybe it is, but given the difficulty of some of the puzzles, I'm not so sure. I know that 6-year-old me struggled with the ice puzzles in Pokemon Blue. There's no way I would have been able to solve some of these. Coupled with the single music track and lack of Minecraft or Subway Surfers footage, I doubt that this game would be able to retain the average child's attention for the 10 minutes it takes to technically finish the game, so I somehow doubt that they were the intended target audience. Ultimately, this is the kind of game that I wanted to like because of the interesting genre mixing and cute premise, but the poor execution of ideas and complete lack of progression or replayability result in a game that is exceedingly average, which simply isn't enough in the gaming world we find ourselves in today. So, that's why my final rating for 10 Minute Tower is a ghost out of 10. Surprisingly lacking in substance, and yet somehow still chained to a single tile. Moving on, let's look at today's second game, 10-Pin Bowling. managing to jump its way into the first 100 games reviewed on this channel due to a loophole on Steam where the name of the game in the store can be completely different to the name of the game in your Steam library, 10-pin bowling (VR support bracket), also called VR 10-pin bowling, was released on Steam on the 28th of May 2021 and is currently, and likely will forever be, in early access. Given that the latest news update for the game was never, it's pretty safe to say that development on this game is dead. In the devs' defense, it appears that they had at least intended to be open with the community about the progress of the game, going so far as to map out the future updates on the store page, and they even linked a Trello board for the game that anyone could access. That said, anyone could also see that the last time anything was done on the Trello board was the same date that they made it available to the public. Make of that what you will. Anyway, enough blathering. I'm sure you're all wondering what the heck this game is. It's 10-pin bowling. You know, like the bowling game from Wii Sports, but bad. The game launches with the Steam VR menu selection, and the devs did go the extra mile to include not only a VR mode, but also a controller mode and a keyboard and mouse mode. And I'm actually going to give the devs an award here for making the first game in the series to have a properly functional Steam VR menu. Every other game has had missing options or blank menus, so this is actually a first. A strange one, but a first nonetheless. Once the game launches, we're put into a mandatory tutorial and system setup, including a resolution menu that can't be scrolled, but otherwise a decent range of customization for graphical options. Although I'm unsure why there is a foliage option, considering that the entire game takes place indoors. Maybe that JPEG that wraps around the skybox is far more graphically demanding than I thought. Right, we're ready to go, so let's get into some bowling. You can pick any of the available lanes, which is any of them, and use the in-game interface to set the number of players. There is a button for adding an AI opponent, but that actually hasn't been implemented in the game, so poor Larry is going bowling by himself today. Difficulty is set per player, but I have no clue what that actually affects, and there is a toggle to raise or lower the rails that prevent you from throwing your bowl into the gutter. I'm not a coward though, so I leave the rails off, and the nearby bowl machine spits out 4 brightly coloured balls for me to choose from. Bowl in hand, I line up and get ready to bowl. Hold up, pause. Now, if you've been paying attention, you might have noticed that something has been missed from this experience. Go on, think back for a moment. Think real hard. Think you've got it? Well, if you guessed that we've never been shown how to bowl, you'd be correct. 10 imaginary points for you. Give yourself a pat on the back. But you might be thinking, but Grail, it's a VR game. Surely you just do a bowling motion, right? Wrong. Remember, I'm not playing in VR. It actually took me a bit to figure out the controls, and it's basically impossible to see on screen, but what you need to do is hold down left click and then push the mouse forward slightly. The ball then gets launched away from you at a set speed that varies with the weight of the ball. I tested this thoroughly, and the speed at which you move the mouse does not affect the speed of the ball in the slightest. Aside from having no control over the speed of the ball, this also means that you aren't able to use any advanced techniques like adding spin to the ball to allow it to curve into the pins for some more tricky shots. Which means that despite releasing almost 15 years earlier, Wii Sports has more advanced controls. Now, the VR mode might be a different story, but I wasn't able to test it, and I also have no reason to believe that it would be any different, for 2 reasons. Firstly, the keyboard and mouse mode is basically VR mode, with the mouse replacing the VR controller and your monitor replacing a VR headset. The core game and mechanics are the same. And secondly, the trailer for the game doesn't appear to show the VR mode either, leading me to believe that there are no substantial differences, because let's face it, if the mechanics of the VR mode were superior, surely that would be what you wanted to showcase in your trailer. Regardless, I play my way through a solo game, and I'm pleased to report that the scoring and bowling mechanics work pretty much as one would expect in a bowling game, with the exception that there is no tracking that checks that the player throws their bowl from behind the line. You can walk as close to the pins as you want before taking your shot, making it ridiculously easy to get a spare when you've got a single pin left. I managed to finish my first game with a pretty fantastic score of 231, mostly because once you find the right position for a strike, it's just a matter of repeating it over and over again. maybe this game would be more fun with friends, but Larry doesn't have any. I played through one more round just to test things like the rails, hit detection, throwing balls into other lanes, and just generally messing around, and to the game's credit, nothing broke. I can't say I was having a particularly fun time though, and ultimately, I was just left feeling nostalgic for Wii Sports. There's honestly not too much else to be said about 10-pin bowling, so let's keep this short and get to the point. As far as the game goes, it's playable. As far as a bowling game goes, it's subpar, simply because there isn't anywhere near enough depth or control over the actual bowling mechanics. With a lot more time and polish from the devs, this game could have turned into a great multiplayer or party game, something fun to play after a few drinks. Looking at the items on the roadmap for the game, they sound pretty interesting. VR AI characters, a tournament system, online multiplayer, and 4 additional game modes would have done quite a bit to add to the longevity of the game. These will likely never be added though, unless the dev makes a miraculous return to the game, at which point I hope they actually prioritize the achievement system first, because quite frankly, I think it's pretty rude that they've added ones that can't be unlocked because they relate to systems that haven't even been added to the game yet, such as winning a tournament or throwing a ball at the crowd. Don't buy this game if you're an achievement completionist, because it's impossible to reach that 100% mark. Call me crazy, but I think the biggest misstep the devs made here was pricing their early access bare bones game at $12.49 Canadian. If you're thinking that they were pricing this game with the final product in mind, think again, because they state on the store page that they plan to increase the price as they added new features to the final product. Even with all the planned content added, I feel like you'd be able to justify going up to $15 at most, simply because there isn't enough replayability here to justify much more than that. So, with all of that in mind, my final rating for 10-pin bowling bracket VR support bracket is a gutter ball out of 10. Do I even need to explain this one? Thanks for watching. Welcome to the end of the video. Today's Larry was sponsored by Bull. You could also become a sponsor by checking out the membership options below. As always, a massive thank you to all the channel members on screen for supporting the channel, with a special thank you to our 2 Knights of the Holy Grail, Freaky Feline and Loveheart Gonzi. Lastly, I want to thank you for joining me on this weird gaming adventure through the depths of Steam. If you made it this far, here's a sneak peek at the next game. And until next time, take care.